The convergence of our voices is the song of our beauty. Many voices will speak here, the song woven through diverse notes. Hello and welcome to Nalo Hopkinson, who is a writer of speculative fiction, and she has two new books out this fall. So perhaps you could tell me about them.
I can. Blackheart Man came out in August. It is a novel I've been working on for 12, 15 years on and off.
Wow.
Um, and I'm glad it's finally out in the world. And the other is a compilation of short stories that I published over the past few years. It's called Jamaica Ginger and Other Concoctions. So they're gathered together in one volume for the first time. And that came out yesterday.
Ah, wow, good.
Yeah,
So both those books have got Caribbean connections, haven't they? Because even your fictional world is very Caribbean. And so you spent your early years in three different places in the
at
Caribbean.
least. Yeah.
Oh, and how come you hopped around to these places?
You'd have to ask my late dad.
Uh,
Seemed he was always finding um, a newer, more attractive uh, uh, place to go and work. He was a writer, poet, playwright, and high school teacher. So we tended
ah,
to follow him around. I was
yeah.
born in Jamaica. I've lived in Jamaica, Trinidad, and Guyana, and the US and Canada.
Uh-huh. So you came by your writing honestly,
Yeah.
one could say.
Yes.
And oh, what else to ask you? Um, about Black Heart Man. And I see that you like black mermaids, and I think that a black mermaid features quite prominently in Black Heart Man. You think?
In a way, there are twin goddesses.
Mhm.
Their features are African, though the world of Blackheart Man is sort of an alternate to our world. And they have caiman tails, so they have alligator tails.
Ah, so not
Um,
quite mermaids.
not quite mermaids, not mermaids.
Yes. And you do make some mermaids with your 3D art.
I do. Yes. I am a craftsperson um, by hobby. And I make 3D stuff. I make 3D soft sculptures, and a lot of them end up being fat black mermaids.
And do you sell your black mermaids?
Off and on, I have. At the
Yeah.
moment, I have a full-time professorship at the University of British Columbia in Canada, and so I don't have too much time to even make them or figure out a route. But at some point, I mean, I'm 63, I'll probably retire soon. I'll have some more time for developing the sort of visual art side of my practice, I think.
Yeah. So when did you start that side there?
It's hard to say because I've been sewing and trying out various crafts since I was a little girl.
Mm.
At some point, I began to make stuff that was not just clothing, and um, my partner convinced me to start calling it art.
As it is. And did you start writing as a young child?
No, I didn't start writing till I was in my late 20s, 28, I think. But I had been reading obsessively since I was maybe about 3. I started
Wow.
reading early on,
Mhm.
and living in the house with a writer and a library worker. there were lots of books. So I was
Yes.
reading um, my dad's books as well, and ended up reading a lot of the kind of European classics. So reading
Hmm.
Homer's Iliad, reading Gulliver's Travels, stuff I can't read Homer's Iliad now. It's too deep for me. But as a kid, you just kind of plow ahead, right?
Yes.
And and then when I was in high school, I my school was near where my mom worked, the library she was working in. So I would go there after school and she would give me her adult library card. And that's where I found the science fiction shelves. They were in the
Ah,
adult section. So I started
yes.
reading those early on too. I was about 14, maybe.
Hmm. And then that's what you decided you wanted to write.
I don't much read anything else, so yes.
Yes.
I mean, I do read in other genres and other forms, but what I'm usually drawn to is some kind of spec fic, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so do you have favorite authors?
I do. Samuel R. Delany is a Black gay author of science fiction and other things. He writes literary criticism too that is just as wonderful as the science fiction. Um, he was one of the first Black authors I discovered in the genre. Um, my friend Kelly Link, who I went to the Clarion Science Fiction Writers Workshop with, is a brilliant writer. And her short stories mess with my head and put me to shame and mess with my head. And um, I have a few. I like N.K. Jemison's work. Um, but that question, there's so many. And
Yeah.
now that many of them are
Yeah.
my, are my colleagues, I'm reading them as well. Uh,
Hmm.
so it's a huge field,
Hmm.
and really interesting in the last decade or so because it is more openly publishing work that deals with questions of identity and race and access and geography and stories that come from writers from all over the world and bring in their cultural um, realities as well. So it's a good time to be reading and publishing in the genre.
Yeah. And you have a bunch of earlier work.
I do.
How many previous books?
I have lost track. Isn't that wild? And it depends on what you call books, because I have three collected comics. So for a while I was writing in the Sandman universe for DC Comics, and that was a monthly thing for 2 years. And they gathered them into three um, graphic novel length works. They are not graphic novels, but they do have story arcs. So if you count those three, I may be up to 10,
Mm-hmm.
two short story collections, and 6 or 7 books. I've lost track. My first novel came out in 1998, and that was Brown Girl in the Ring.
Ah, yes. And that is still in print, is it?
It is, it is.
Yeah, yeah.
It has still has enough demand that my then
Hmm.
publisher is keeping it in print. I think it's
Yeah.
still one of my more popular ones.
Hmm. Hmm. And so what else are you up? Oh, you were on a book tour. Where did you go and how was that?
It was a tiny tour, 3 cities, one of them my home city. So I went to Toronto, where I spoke at the Toronto Public Library, was interviewed by Ronaldo Walcott, and that was big fun. Then I
Hmm.
went to Ottawa, to the Ottawa Writers Festival, where I was on a panel with Sui Davies Gombawa, and interviewed by Adrian Hare, and then back to Toronto the next day and the day after that at the Vancouver Writers Festival, uh,
Yeah.
interviewed by Doretta Lau.
Yeah.
Um, Exhausting. I'm still still kind
Yes,
of recovering
it is.
because
Yeah.
you're on a plane every few hours. But
Hmm.
really, really nice, and I think speaks to uh support from my publisher for the
Hmm.
novel.
Yeah.
because tours are expensive.
Yes.
Um, but they're getting behind it, and it's getting good reviews, and I'm really pleased.
Yes, of course. So, do you have plans for another novel, or is that kind of not in the works for now?
Um, I always have something, well, almost always have something else that I probably started working on to get away from working on the one that was under contract. So I have a novel that's about 20,000 words in. Um, the title is as yet a working title. I'm calling it Duppy Jacket, but that won't make much sense to most people. So I'll probably find another title at some point. And it is similarly where Blackheart Man is set in Caribbean-esque um, region that doesn't exist and that might not be in this world. Um, Duppy Jacket is set in an alternate history, in the alternate past of Jamaica.
Ah,
So I'm drawing on some actual events. Jamaica had a World's Fair in, I think, 1891, uh,
oh.
and I'm kind of building it around that.
Hmm.
But it is fantastical. And I am fictionalizing a lot. I'm not talking about the World's Fair. I have a character who's going through a set of journeys and tasks to try and fix a deep wrong in her life.
Oh, sounds interesting. So, what does W jacket mean?
Duppy jacket. So Duppy, it's the,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Duppy.
Duppy. It's the Jamaican word for ghost.
Ah, yes.
And jacket is Jamaican slang for someone born out of wedlock,
Ah,
whatever that means nowadays, and especially
yes.
whatever Jamaica. So she is somebody who gets um, partially taken over by a supernatural creature. So she's trying to get it out of her body because it's changing her body, and she thinks of it as a duppy.
Hmm.
It's not. It's a natural being. Well, it's an unnatural natural being, and because it is sort of taking her over without consent, she thinks of it as a jacket, as this thing
Mm.
she's um, that was not of her doing.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, so the title makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but takes 10 minutes to explain. So,
Yeah.
so if it does get published, the publisher will probably hope I have other title suggestions, or they will make one up for me and I won't like it.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So, do you have any words for new writers of speculative fiction?
Yeah, I might say, based on stuff I hear from my students, I might say, assume all your assumptions are wrong about the field, about what you should be doing, about what makes a writer, about assume all of that is mm, you can take or not take that advice, because I find new writers use those assumptions to get in their own way.
Mm.
So people tell you have to write every day. I have ADHD. I can't do anything twice in a row. I do not write every day unless I'm under contract and the book is due in like a week.
Mhm.
Um, I've heard people assume you have to write in proper English. Again, whatever that is, because
Mhm.
English itself is a conglomeration of, it's like a trade language. Um, assume you have to be young to start. No, no, you don't.
Mhm.
You can start anytime.
Yeah.
Um, assume all kinds of things that you'll never find a publisher or editor who understands what you do. Don't assume that.
Mm.
Um, find one.
Yes. Which can be quite a difficult job, can't it?
It can. If you're writing in my genres, though, it's still a fairly small and close-knit community, and there are still lots of helpful people and lots of helpful information.
Mm.
So I'd say check your own assumptions by, looking this stuff up, asking others for help, and asking people who know. That's the other thing I'd say. Don't ask people who don't know. So I've
Mm.
seen budding writers asking their friends
Ah,
for
yes.
professional advice,
Hmm.
friends who don't write, or friends who um, might be at the same stage they are and who don't know the answers. And so this circle of fear and inaction kind of,
Yes.
you know, gets
Hmm.
condensed and stops
Hmm.
people. And it breaks my heart when fear stops people from making the art they want to make.
Yes, yes. And do you have an opinion on writers' groups? Do you think they're a help or a hindrance?
Depends. I come out of a writers group
Mm.
and found it enormously helpful. Even though I was the only Caribbean and at one point the only Black person in it. We were all writing at about the same level, like same level of professional achievement. We'd all maybe published a short story, not much else. We
Hmm.
all worked really hard at staying informed about the professional side of the genre. We were all big readers. Um, and so if your group is at more or less the same level as you are,
Yes.
um, and committed to whatever your publishing goal is. Mine is to was to be conventionally published, professionally published,
Hmm.
and it was the same for everybody in my group. Um, but people that aspire to different kinds of publication, any of them is fine.
Yes.
But make sure there's a similar understanding with people in
Hmm.
your group. And you can start your own group. You can, put an ad in the local library. Um,
Yes.
that kind of thing. And those can be very helpful. Where
Hmm.
it's not helpful is where you find yourself in a group where your goals aren't the same,
Yes.
where uh, everybody isn't at about the same professional level, which means one person ends up being the de facto leader and maybe they don't want that position.
Hmm.
Uh, Good writing group doesn't usually need a leader.
Hmm.
Um, if you're all equals, then you're all pulling
Yes.
together. Can be really helpful. It was one of the only ways I was able to write regularly because I struggled to do that.
Hmm.
And I finished my first novel because the two guys in my writing group were so supportive.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
At one
Mm.
point, I was struggling to finish the novel for a deadline. I'd never finished a novel before and didn't know what I was doing, was panicking. And my group met, and I remember it was Brent Hayward, Toronto writer, who said to me, "How are you doing?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm stuck. I don't know what I'm doing." And he said, "I have faith in you. I think you can finish it." And I
Mm.
clung to those words.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
swear, Brent helped get me across that finish line in time for the deadline.
Yes. I think it's nice for a creative person to have somebody who does believe in them.
Yeah, yeah. So yes, also find those people. I have a friend who is a budding writer and who um, was being told by his friends that he would never get anywhere because he wasn't Stephen King.
Oh,
Stephen King didn't start out as Stephen King.
no.
Nobody who knew he was either. Um, Other writers could tell my friend that, but his friends didn't know and thought
Hmm.
they were being helpful.
Hmm. Hmm. So I think before we come to a close here, is there anything else you'd like to add? And words of wisdom?
Ah, I don't know. I kind of clutch when people ask me to be wise on command.
Okay, just words, whether wise or not.
Well, I think it boils down to the same thing is if this is something you want to do, you can do it. When it becomes something you don't want to do anymore, stop. It doesn't mean you failed.
Hmm.
Um, I think people just they give themselves such they oppress themselves with so many negative, I'm not doing this right. I'm not worthy. Who needs another writer in the world? We all do. We all need other writers in the world. We need as many. If everybody in the planet was a writer, it would be a good thing.
Hmm.
There's no such thing as too many.
Oh, well, that's great. So thank you. And those closing words are a real inspiration. And thank you so much
You're
for
very
talking
welcome.
to me here.
Thanks for asking.